bugou na minha budela, não.
Deixa eu prender uma assim.
I see.
Hey, Eldron.
Hey.
Okay, Audra?
Yo.
Would you say that in order for something to be created, that there would need to be an activity of some sort, or an act of will, or both, or none of those?
How are you defining those things?
Activity as in just sort of thought or movement or change.
Okay. Some sort of action.
Yeah, some sort of action. And then, will being, free will, choosing. Or are those needed in conglomerate with one another? Like, do those both need to be there? Or does neither of those need to be there? Or can something come about the essence of the thing itself without it being changed at all?
I don't know. I think change is required. So I think some sort of metaphysical action is the most kind of core thing.
So, I mean, in terms of metaphysical things, do you think there's a hierarchy of metaphysical things?
What do you mean by that?
Like, is the principle of identity A equals A, is that higher than like the law of causality or something like that? Like, are there levels to it? Like, is the law of identity needed before causality happens? I would think that it would. But I don't know.
I don't know. I haven't thought about it that specifically, relating it to like laws, rules of logic, and that sort of thing. I'm pondering here.
Yeah, me too. I'm trying to make this argument, and questions like that need to be answered before I can make my argument. I would think that that's true.
So I guess I'm almost wondering, it's like, what is the separation between this idea of whatever you're calling will and action? Like, why are we differentiating the two?
Right, so maybe they don't have to be. I mean, it's another question that I would have.
Yeah. Because
Like,
if we're
can
if we're
something
broadening
metaphysical
terms
simply
of-
will it? Would be the question. Like, can it simply just will it to happen and it's there? Or is it from the essence of the higher metaphysical being or principle or whatever you want to call it, out of that essence does it come other things, other beings and other
right.
principles and such?
Well, definitely my preferred way of thinking about it, the way that so far I would say, would be that it has more to do with, like metaphysical attention. Or
What do you mean by that?
Metaphysical. Well, some things, if you give attention to something, even if it's special, and then we're talking about creation, so you're giving attention to something that that's all that defines it, is your like attention and thought about it.
Mm-hmm. But in order to think about it, it would have to exist.
No, because that's creation.
Well, not necessarily. So, I mean,
To me, that's the core of the idea of is that
for
something
me
that
to
didn't
think about
exist
something,
then does. And so the question is, what changed so that a thing that what did not exist then does exist?
right? I mean, yeah, in the metaphysical realm, that wouldn't happen like that. So it wouldn't be like a temporal creation or something like that. But, which is another complication in and of itself. Is how is that possible? But if there's a hierarchy of things, it would seem like the lower things are like the substrate, or like they're predicated upon the higher things. They're coming from some sort of substrate.
I don't know, like I said, I don't really separate. The separation of elements is what I'm having trouble with here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, basically, I would say that creation exists within or at least initially exists within the thing that created it.
Right.
So that's what is
Yeah.
from that perspective.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
And it really changes when you're trying to, because I mean, just by necessity, I'm having to conceive of it in a linear time dimension, but I don't know that that's necessarily necessary.
Sorry, my phone overheated.
And I think the hardest frame to take away from thinking about it is the linear time aspect. You're like, that's really not necessary, but it's kind of hard to not think within that frame.
Right. And we have to think discursively, where metaphysically the metaphysical would think about itself actively, because it doesn't change. It's not like the law of identity suddenly becomes something else or disappears one day because I'm not thinking about it or something.
Well, you can. I mean, that's where the idea comes in that it's not because you're thinking about it; it's because it's the encompassing entity that's the one paying the attention to everything. And if it exists
Right.
without outside of time, then it's paying constant attention to existence, and that's why existence exists.
Right. And there's like, so that would be called intellect itself. But I mean, Plotinus's thing is that intellect is thinking about the one, and the one doesn't think. So the thing that truly gives existence to the thing that makes things exist doesn't think, doesn't do anything, because it has itself. And intellect, insofar as it is thinking, is lacking something. So thinking requires lacking.
Right.
And I don't necessarily agree with that.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm having. It seems kind of. I mean, I can see the point of that thought, but I don't see that thought as obvious either.
You don't have to lack anything all the time.
Right, but if we're
Well,
talking about
we're not. This is what this guy's talking about in the chat, Steve. Right, but in intellect there is no time, so it's not lacking anything